Family expectation, of course, constitute one such set of influences. This is inevitable and also fitting. Parents after all have seen more of life than kids have. They want the best for their sons and daughters, and they have their own considered ideas about what the best consists of. Sometimes the kids happily accept the parents version of success. Sometimes they reject it. But the point I'd like to make is this: a son may conform or rebel. A daughter may adopt her parents' dreams or veer off in a quite different direction toward her own. Either way, their choices will be made with reference to their family's expectations. This could not be otherwise. It's human nature, even or maybe especially when we decide to float our family's expectations. We have to acknowledge that the power of those expectations is legitimate and real, as it is with family expectations. So it is with peer pressure and social fashion. But when it comes to definitions of success, fashion is fickle, just like it is in regard. Just like it is in regard to hemlines or lapel wide. There is no one version of success that has been agreed upon and esteemed in all places and at all times. In Periclean Athens, success meant having time and leisure to hang out and talk with the philosophers. Among certain monastic orders, success means letting go of all all attachments and desires, breaking off dependence on the material world, having nothing and needing nothing. but success can also be counted in goats or grandchildren. Sometimes honor, however defined, is esteemed far above wealth, far above wealth. In other times and places wealth seems to count above all else. Given all these varied definitions of success, it should be clear that success, in fact, is a very peculiar kind of noun. Think about it. We can all pretty much agree, for example, on what a chair is, say tree or book or steering wheel, and most of us will picture something real and solid, something whose existence does not depend on our opinion. Does success even exist in that same way? Success basically is whatever we decided to call success. If this is this if this is circular, I think it should also be liberating. Why should people be captives to something that doesn't even exist except by a consensus. Consensus that is always shifting. But for all of that, people are shaped by the times and the societies that they live in, and there is no denying the power of social fashion. As with family expectations and eras, dominant version of success is something we can accept or fight against. Fight against. What we can't do is pretend it isn't there, or that it isn't at some level a factor in the choices that we make. Signing on with a dominant version of success is relatively easy. This is not to say that achieving success is easy. It almost never is. But aiming for the spaces of success that's in style at a given moment is pretty simple. It requires no great originality or soul searching. It's mainly a matter of going with with the momentary flow, subscribing to the same set of criteria and priorities that most people have agreed to honor. By contrast, adopting a personal version of success that's at variance with the fashionable kind takes a fair amount of thought and strength of character, and this is true no matter what the dominant version of success happens to be. Back around 1969, say it would have taken real imagination and courage for a young person to say, you know what? I think I'd really like to be a stockbroker. In more recent decades, of course, our consensual definition of success seems to have become more and more narrowly involved with money, pure and simple. Everything except earning power has become relatively devalued. This trend kicked in during the 1980s, a decade 1980s, a decade when business school applications reached historic highs, and Time magazine was doing cover stories about the rise of yappidom. A friend of mine recently passed along a rather horrifying anecdote that neatly sums up the dominant ethos of that time. I was at a party, he recalled, and the host introduced me to a woman friend of his. She asked me what I did, which was generally the first thing people wanted to know about each other back then. I told her I was a writer. She looked me up and down, shoes to haircut, and said exactly one word: successful. The question struck me as so rude and crass that for a moment I couldn't even speak. This person had zero interest in what I actually did. What did I write about? What drove me to write? Was my stuff funny? Tragic? It was all the same to her. If I wrote a limericks, or if I just completed a massive treatise that explained the meaning of life. All that mattered was whether I was making a lot of duff. I finally managed to mumble, "I get by," and I moved off toward the bar. If that sort of narrow and even obsessive emphasis on money led to nothing worse than rude remarks at parties. I suppose it wouldn't matter very much, but in fact, defining defining success in terms of reward rather than the actual content of one's work has an array of very real and serious consequences. Perhaps the most important consequence is this: our definition of success at a given time has a way of funneling people toward certain professions and funneling them away from others. If money is the sole criterion by which we separate the winners from the losers, then people will tend to go where the money is, or where it seems to be. That, however, can lead to problems. Can to lead to problems of a very particular sort. Back in the 1980s, the hot carrier was management consulting. So many people chased that particular grail that, not surprisingly, there soon came to be a glut of management consultants. Fashion swung to lawyering until there were too many lawyers. More recently, the tide turned toward investment banking, and we've seen where that particular fixation got us. The point is that even if we follow a rainbow whose only color is money green, there's just no guarantee that there'll be a pot of gold at the end. But okay, that's just the economic risk of a version of success that revolves around money. What about the emotional and spiritual and social risks? What about the callings that don't get answered because they are unlikely to lead to wealth. What about the curiosity and creativity that go unfulfilled because they are seen as dangerous distractions from the pursuit of money? What about the professions built on content, not reward? Consider teaching as a prime example. There is no more important profession. No profession touches more lives. No profession has a bigger influence in shaping both individual and collective futures. Moreover, teachers must bring all of themselves to the job, heart as well as mind. Sheer physical energy as well as expertise. In terms of content, teaching is huge. In terms of monetary reward, it is not. And this means that when money tops our list of priorities, there are many talented people who won't even consider a career in teaching. Clearly, whenever someone who might make a great teacher decides not to be one, it's a loss for kids. But there's another side to this as well. It's a potentially even bigger loss to the person who shuns the classroom for some better paying workplace. What are the satisfactions he's missing out on in favor of a bigger paycheck? What opportunity for personal growth is she trading for a signing bonus? At the end of the day, will these people feel better about serving a corporation or about helping children learn? Again, adopting a version of success that's out of fashion at a given time requires courage and imagination, a determination to decide for oneself what really matters. There are professions more likely to make us rich in terms of money. There are professions more likely to make us rich in terms of spirit. If these latter professions are to flourish, we need to invest them with a kind of respect and prestige that can't be counted in dollars. We have to be reminded of how intrinsically valuable they are. Fortunately, there are at least some people who are working at doing exactly that. One of them is a man named Taylor Malley, a poet and teacher who has taken it as his mission to enlarge upon the dignity of teaching. I recently came across a poem of his in which he describes a dinner party attended by members of various professions. Inevitably, at some point, the conversation turns to earnings and an attorney in the gathering asks the teacher what he makes. Mali brilliantly turns the question upside down as this excerpt attests. The intent can be found at www.taylormalley.com. You want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I make parents see their children for who they are and what they can. I make kids wonder. I make them question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them right. And then I make them read. You want to know what I make? I make a goddamn difference. What about you? Years ago, in a book about Zen Buddhism, I came across a quote that has stayed with me all of this time, because it is the sort of mysterious and elusive pronounce that seems to hint at a meaning far beyond the simple words. The key to the treasure is the treasure. I mention this here because I believe it has application to our notions about success. Consider it seems to be a habit of mind to imagine success as a literal thing, a pirate chest, say, full of gold or jewels or whatever it is we decide to value. But what good is treasure chest if we can't open it? And how can we open it if the key we how can we open it if the key we hold in our hand is not a match to the particular treasure chest we're trying to open? And this, I think, is the sense in which the key to the treasure is the treasure. There are any number of possible treasures out there, waiting to be claimed. But it is the key that each of us holds in our hand that determines which one might be ours. And this mysterious key that each of us possesses, what is it made of? It's made of our own unique mix of inclinations, and passions. The treasure that can be unlocked by that key, and by that key only is the version of success we defined for ourselves. Life is what we make it, and part of succeeding lies in breaking through to a clear understanding of what our own success should look like. No one else can tell us how to measure or describe it. No one else can judge whether we've reached our goals or fallen short. The world can throw rewards at us, or can withhold them. And that's the world's business. But the world can't judge the fundamental value and legitimacy of what we are trying to achieve. That's our business. The success we define for ourselves is the treasure that cannot be tarnished or taken away. 11. The perils of prosperity. It is a central belief of mine that people are more alike than different. Beyond the happenstance of things like birthplace and skin color and material circumstances, we share a common set of hopes and fears, needs and longings. We can all experience the joy of love and friendship. None of us is a stranger to the pain of conflict and loss. We mostly agree on what is funny and what is sad. We are all fellow travelers in the search for meaning. Why do the great stories and the great mythologies, mythologies ring true in all times and places. Because as we have seen, in the Midas story, for example, they address and shed light on the feelings and yearnings that are common to us all. All. Why is music regarded as the universal language? Because it does not depend on the varying words we use to describe things. Rather, it cuts straight to the emotions and the energy that exists within each of us, and that words can only approximately describe. In this page, I have tried my best. Tried my best to celebrate our shared humanity by talking about things I believe to be universal. And the need for solid values, the challenge of finding and answering our own vocations, and the importance of acknowledging and learning from our mistakes, and of deciding for ourselves what the concept of success is really all about. Those issues, I believe aptly to all of us, but it's also true that they will play out differently in different lives. In this regard, variables like place of birth and material circumstances do matter. While at the end of the day, the American prep school student and the West African villager have the same yearning for security, self-respect, and peace of mind. And the particularly routes they take to get there, and the exact challenge along the way will probably be very different. In this chapter, then I would like to return in greater detail to a subject I've only touched on so far, namely the specific risks and pitfalls facing affluent families as they try to pass along good values to their kids. Clearly, all families want to pass along good values. I've never yet met a father who wanted his child to grow up spoiled or lazy. I've never yet met a mother who wanted her kids to be greedy or smug. The problem, though, is that there is sometimes a great distance between the message that's intended and the message that's actually conveyed. The reasons for this are complicated and bedeviling part of why there's no such things as being a perfect parent. I once heard a story that vividly illustrates how these intended message sometimes get garbled and how the best intentions sometimes backfire. There was a man who had grown up in a family of modest means, but one with a great work ethic and a high regard for education. His parents sacrificed to put him through college. He himself took on part-time jobs as well as student loans that became a serious burden when he decided to go on to medical school. But he ended up with dual degrees in medicine. But ended up with dual degrees in medicine and engineering, using his quite rare combination of skills and expertise. He went on to design a device that allowed seriously ill patients to dispense their own pain medication in safe and limited doses. He patented the device, which he then licensed to a major pharmaceutical company for a hefty sum as well as ongoing royalties. Quite suddenly, he was a wealthy man. By the time his own children came along, he'd been wealthy for some years. By then, it was a given that the family lived in a big house in a nice neighborhood. That mom and dad both drove shiny new cars that they could eat in fancy restaurants and take winter vacations in places where the sun was always shining, always shining. The father, of course, was happy to provide a comfortable and privileged life for his children, but he was also concerned that they were getting a getting a skewed and very uh, partial view of what life was really all about. He'd seen the whole progression of staging and challenge that had eventually made him wealthy. He remembered the hard work, the sacrifices, the pressure and anxiety of indebtedness. He remembered that it was his own lesser than prosperous parents who had instilled in him the confidence and motivations to make his mark in the world. He remembered too that in designing his pain relief mechanism, he hadn't just been trying to make a lot of money. He'd been trying to help people and to make a meaningful contribution to how medicine was practiced. The kids had seen none of this firsthand. This was not their fault, nor was it his. They just came along at a different part of the curve. Still, it left the father with a dilemma. He was not the sort of person who bragged of his accomplishments. He certainly didn't want to make his kids feel guilty about their advantage. At the same time, he did want them to understand that wealth and material comfort did not come about by magic or because their family was somehow more deserving than others. These things were the result of effort. He wanted his children as well to understand the difference between wealth and fundamental human worthiness. worthiness. They were no better than people who had less. They were not inferior to people who had more. Who had more. The summer his oldest son turned 16, the father came up with a stratagem for exposing the boy to some of these basic life lessons. The family belonged to a country club, one of those old line places where members still walked the golf course while caddies carried the bags. It was decided that the son would caddy for the summer. Caddying was good, healthy outdoor work. It was also difficult and selfless. It entailed taking on the drudgery while other people had the fun. It demanded remaining cheerful and polite if one hoped to make good tips. Moreover, the boy would be working alongside grown men who'd been caddies for many years and who would always be caddies. The father hoped that his son would feel a solidarity with these men, a respect for their knowledge, a recognition that there was dignity in their exhausting and modest paying work. So the boy carried other people's golf bags for a couple months, and at the end of the summer the father asked him what he'd learned from the experience. I learned, said the son, that I better make a lot of money so I can have other people carry the bags for me. That was the takeaway. The father was understandably baffled and charged. This was quite the opposite of the lesson he had hoped his son would learn. What about an honest regard for hard physical work? What about compassion for the people whose entire working lives would consist of that kind of labor? Why hadn't the son absorbed those messages? The father had no idea, and truthfully, who can say? Maybe the members whose golf bags he'd carried had put ideas in his head that contravened his father's hopes for the experience. Maybe the other caddies just weren't very nice to him, or maybe for better or worse, the son's basic character and values had already been shaped by a complex web of people and events, by all of the mysterious influences and unexamined assumptions that might go with growing up wealthy, but with an insufficient understanding of how the world had come to be. Could the father possibly have done a better job, not just during one adolescent summer, but through the son's whole upbringing of explaining how the family's prosperity had come about? Could he have more clearly conveyed the satisfaction that came from starting with very little and succeeding on one's own merits? Could he have made it clearer that the essence of success lay in focused effort and the substance of an accomplishment, and not in the reward that sometimes resulted? Was the caddying experiment just too little too late? Probably no one but the father himself could answer these questions. But I do think they are the kind of questions that need to be addressed when we think about the subtle and many-sided job of passing on good values. In the foregoing anecdote, the son heard a message very different from the one the father thought he was sending, and the unintended result was to focus the young man's ambition solely on making money, so that he could maintain his privileged lifestyle. The father was disappointed in this, but at least the kid had some species of ambition. For some wealthy families, the problem is that ambition seems to be lacking in their sons and daughters. Why work hard if one's economic future already seems secure? Why strive if striving only brings you more of what you already have? What's left to do if mom or dad or some more distant forebear forebear has already made a mark in the world and established the family's prominence.